Let's shake and bacon. Oh wait.
No, wait.
Who's making bacon? We are. Today we start the week-ish long process of making bacon at home. We'll be making 2 different types, one with a basic cure and one with a whiskey cure. And we'll be using the oven method, so no smoker is needed for this process. First things first, we need to prep our pork belly. Now, I bought my hunk of pork belly at a local Asian market, which is where I've had the best luck finding pork belly consistently. I just asked them if they could cut me a piece that was between 6 and 8 pounds because I wanted enough to make 2 different kinds of bacon. But if you're only making one type of bacon, you should be good with like a 3-pound chunk. You're gonna wanna buy the meatiest piece of pork belly that you can find. It looks like we lucked out. Doesn't look like we have anything to worry about as far as the meatiness of this piece, which is dope. And since this piece is so large, I'm gonna go ahead and split it into 2 now and then start cleaning up the meat side a little bit. Seeing if there's any silver skin to cut off or any little bits of bone that have been left behind. The next step is to remove the skin. Now, if you find skinless pork belly, you can skip this step. You can also ask at the store if they can remove it for you. If you do get it removed at the store, the price will most likely still include the weight of the skin, whether or not it is still attached. So I would recommend making sure that you are taking that skin home because you're gonna pay for it anyway. We're going to try to take as little of the fat that the skin is connected to off. A couple tips to make this process easier for you are making sure that your pork belly is nice and cold. Cold fat cuts way easier than warm fat, as well as a sharp knife, that's for sure. And the skin is pretty tough, it's pretty thick. So I'm really pulling it back and cutting more so into the skin and peeling it off that way than cutting down towards the meat. I created a little handle that I can hold on to for the skin. Flip it over so that the skin is down. Slip your knife under there, pretty much flat against the board, maybe angled slightly towards the skin. And then I'm just gonna wiggle this piece of fat and my knife all the way through. If you've ever skinned a fish, same concept. Definitely check on it every once in a while to make sure that you're leaving the fat behind that you want, not taking too much of it with you. I'm going to set the skin aside as well as anything I trim off. I'm gonna leave it in the fridge to deal with at a later time. Ooh, let me show you from another angle. Check on it every once in a while, make sure you're cutting where you want to cut, correct where you need to correct. Nice. Now, if you have really wonky, uneven pieces of pork belly, I would recommend squaring them up to be as even in thickness and general shape as possible for even curing and even cooking. But ours look pretty dang square to me, so I'm just going to leave them as is. The next course of action is to weigh both of these pieces. We're going to be weighing them in grams. It'll just be easier to do the recipe calculations for the cure in grams. I'm gonna throw these bad boys into the fridge and let them chill in there while we put together the cures. All of the instructions for this process will be found in the description below for your referencing pleasure. Now for the cure, the base is going to be exactly the same for both types of bacon, and I've already done all of the calculations, so I will put them up on the screen, but it'll be 2% of the meat's weight in salt, 2% in sugar, and 0.25% in curing salt. We will be adding other ingredients later to spice up and differentiate the two, but this is where we are starting. As far as the sugar, you can use white or brown. It's up to you. We're gonna be using brown today just because I want that little extra depth of flavor that it'll provide, because we're going with a really simple overall flavor profile. The curing salt that we are using goes by a bunch of different names. Prague powder number 1, pink curing salt, Instacure like what we're using today. I will make sure to link to this specific one in the description for you. You need to make sure that you are using this specific type of salt. And while it looks very similar to pink Himalayan salt, the two are very, very different. Pink Himalayan salt gets its coloring from minerals in it, whereas curing salt is a mixture of table salt and sodium nitrite that is then dyed pink so that you don't confuse it with regular table salt. You don't want to go around seasoning your dinner with curing salt. For the basic bacon, I'm going to add a little bit of smoked paprika to the cure. It's a little sweet and it'll add a little bit of a smoky flavor. And since we will not be smoking our bacon after we cure it, I want to add smokiness in other ways. I'm not gonna be too precise with how much I put in there. That's about 1.5 teaspoons, I would say. Shake it up to mix everything together. Before we cover our pork belly with the cure, we're going to do one more step, and that is brushing on a thin layer of liquid smoke onto both sides of our pork belly. I am going to dilute the liquid smoke 1-to-1 with water. We're not gonna need very much, maybe 2 teaspoons of liquid smoke, equal amount of water. It'll just add another layer of smokiness. This is something that you can do later in the process as well, after we cure it and before we cook it, or you can skip this entirely. It is up to you. The reason that we are diluting the liquid smoke is because 1, this stuff is strong, and 2, we can always add more later. And of course, I will put a link to the specific liquid smoke that I'm using in the description below. Now we will do our very, very best to evenly distribute this cure all over all of the sides of our pork belly. Now we're going to throw our cure covered pork belly into a bag. I'm using a vacuum sealer bag. You can also use a regular zip top bag. And then we want to make sure that we get all of the cure that we can into this bag. That's why I use this parchment, so that I can just pick it up and tap, tap, tap the rest of the cure into this bag. The cure is pretty quickly gonna start drawing moisture out of the pork belly, so I'm gonna go ahead and vacuum seal this now. If you're using a regular zip top bag, just make sure you push as much air out of it as possible. I'm gonna label and date this. If you saw our duck pastrami video, then you saw the check boxes that I put on the brine box so that I could check off each time that I flipped over the pieces of duck in the brine. This is going to be sitting in the fridge for the next 5 to 7 days, and we're gonna have to flip it every day. So I'm going to do the exact same thing with the check boxes so I can check off each time I flip this. I'm gonna put it on a piece of tape instead of directly on the plastic, because there's probably gonna be condensation when I go to flip them, and that's just gonna make it really difficult to check off the box. And the whiskey cured bacon will get its own set of boxes as well. Moving on to our whiskey cured bacon, instead of brushing on a layer of liquid smoke, I'm going to brush on a layer of rye whiskey. I'm using a blend that I personally blended at Baltimore Spirits Company last year. If you've been around a while, you've heard us mention them a bunch of times before. You can use your choice of any spirit here: bourbon, rum, whiskey, whatever you'd like. I specifically chose this one because it has very prominent smoky notes. It smells delicious. To the whiskey cure, I'm going to add a couple, like literally 2 drops of liquid smoke directly into the cure. And then I'm also going to add that same rye that we just brushed onto our pork belly, about 1% of the weight of the meat. It's a little bit more than 1%. I was a little heavy-handed, but we're just gonna put it all in there. It's like 2 grams too much, and I wasn't gonna pour it back in the bottle. This cure is definitely pasty in comparison to the first one. Before we add our cure to our pork belly, we're going to brush on one more layer of something, and that something is maple syrup, because maple syrup goes so good with bacon. I'm gonna try and mitigate the mess by brushing on the maple syrup and then putting the cure on this side, and then flipping it over and putting the maple syrup and the cure on that side. It probably won't help with the mess, but in my mind it will. Same deal as the first one. We're gonna bag it up, vacuum seal it, label, date it, and give it some check boxes. This is gonna go join its brother in the fridge on a sheet tray. We're gonna let them cure for the next 5 to 7 days, flipping daily, so I will see you tomorrow for our first flip. Our pork belly has been curing for just over 6 days. Today is day 7, and it's time to remove them from their respective bags, give them a good rinse with some water to remove all of the cure, and then pat them dry with paper towels. This is the time that we can check the salt levels, so that if the bacon is too salty for our liking, we can go ahead and remedy that by soaking it in some water for a few hours up to a few days, depending on how salty the bacon is. So we are going to slice a little bit off of both pieces, fry them up in a pan, and give a little taste test. Make sure to slice off the outermost layer first and then cut your tester pieces, because the outside obviously had direct contact with the cure, and so the end pieces are going to be much more intense than most of the rest of the bacon. Don't judge the really wonky cuts, please, and really uneven cooking. It's just a tester. It's like the first pancake. We have the basic cure. Oh, dang. Oh, dang. Oh my goodness, that's gonna be so good. Salt levels on the regular one. Perfect. Let's cleanse the palate. Now the whiskey one. Oh, that's gonna be so good too. Salt levels are perfect. We are in the home stretch. Very exciting. Since we are cooking our bacon in the oven, we can move on directly to the cooking step. If we were smoking the bacon, it is recommended to leave it uncovered for several hours to overnight in the fridge to let it develop a pellicle. In this context, a pellicle is essentially a tacky film made up of proteins that coats the surface of the meat that helps the smoke flavor stick better. You can still do that step if you would like, but we are going to skip it today. I've put our bacon on a wire rack on top of a large sheet tray. This is actually a sheet cake pan, and I've made sure that there's enough space in between them so that the heat can circulate evenly around everybody. We are going to preheat our oven to 225 degrees Fahrenheit. We're gonna let them bake in there until they reach an internal temperature of about 145 degrees Fahrenheit. We're shooting for between 145 and 150, and I have inserted a probe thermometer into one of them, set to 145, so it'll go off when we reach that. It took just over an hour and a half for the bacon to reach our desired internal temperature. It's really important to let it cool completely on the counter until you can handle it with your hands so that you can do the next step, which is wrapping each piece in plastic, putting them on a sheet tray in case of any leakage, and letting them sit in the fridge for several hours, or in our case, overnight. This will make slicing so much easier. We just have a little bit more waiting to do, and then I will see you tomorrow for the final result. It has been 8 days. And now we finally have bacon we can eat, so let's go ahead and try it. We've waited long enough. We'll start with the basic cure, the one that we added smoked paprika to and a layer of liquid smoke to make up for the fact that we didn't smoke these. So let's see how successful we were. Which side looks better? Grande. Oh, damn. Oh my god, that's so good. The chew is great. The fat does that like melty, crumbly thing. That's my favorite. I love that. For being smokeless bacon, it really isn't lacking for smoky flavor at all. That layer of liquid smoke that we put on there and the smoked paprika that we added to the cure, I really think pulled their weight for sure. It's so good. It's a little bit sweet from obviously the sugar, and I feel like honestly perfectly salty for a piece of bacon. This is so good. The liquid smoke and the smoked paprika really were the cheat code for the oven smokeless, basically cured bacon. 10 out of 10, genuinely 10 out of 10. Let's try a whiskey cured piece of bacon. This is what we're looking like. Oh my god. Oh dang. Oh dang! Completely different than this one. Oh my goodness. It's less smoky than this one, which makes sense, but it's also a little bit sweeter and almost a little bit brighter, it feels like. The chew on this one and the fat, also awesome. Oh, this is so good. I don't know how to explain. The basic cured one gives off a little bit more of just like darker, richer, smokier flavors, whereas the whiskey cured one is a little bit brighter, a little bit sweeter, but not necessarily in terms of like sugary sweet. The whiskey definitely comes through, which is so cool. That's so cool. Oh, and we added a little bit of maple to this one too, so the sweetness is totally different. I think I like this one better. I love them both. Both insanely delicious. But I personally think the whiskey one comes out on top. for me. We did a layer of that whiskey, and then we did a layer of the maple. We also added whiskey to the cure, and the whiskey definitely comes through. It's not like super overpowering by any means, but it really lent its flavors. The maple syrup comes through really well. Oh my goodness. This was incredibly successful. 10 out of 10. Would recommend doing this. This was super fun to do. This video was super fun to make. I will absolutely be making more bacon, because also now that I look at what I have cut off of the pieces of bacon already, I'm a little nervous at how quickly we are going to finish them. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed and learned something. If you did, please leave us a like, a comment, and subscribe for more bartending and butchery content. And make sure to keep your eyes peeled for another video coming soon where we take this bacon and turn it into a variety of game day snacks that will pair perfectly with a win from your favorite team. And until next time. Oh, this is still recording. Oops. Day 1. Is the lighting okay? I didn't check my hair. Hopefully my hair is okay. You can do this. You got it. You got it. I gotta change the camera angle now. Cures. Cures. The bacon cures. It sounds so strange. Okay, lighting. Fix yourself, please. A little too much. Okay. Okay. La 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 la. Yeah, you can hear me. Thank God. If you watched the cooking vlog that went up last, I filmed 90% of that before I realized that I never turned on the external mic. My bad. So now I'm like super paranoid that my mic isn't on. It's on. I'm 95% sure. The brown sugar is a little clumpy. Did I miss bone? I missed some bone. Damn it. I missed a big bone. That's embarrassing. I missed a big ass bone. Oh my gosh. Oh, whoops. Oh shit. This was a lot easier and cleaner in my head. To remove, reaches an in temperature. Was that weird? Because you best believe I'm making myself a BLT sandwich after I'm done filming. Success.